There are moments in life that change everything. Small, seemingly insignificant moments that spiral out of control, revealing a side of people you never knew existed. I'm Jack, and my story begins not with a confrontation or an affair, but with something far more subtle, a shift in the air that I refuse to acknowledge. It wasn't the loud arguments or the moments of passion that signaled a problem. No, for me, it was the quiet erosion of trust, the silence where there used to be words. We all know how relationships work in the beginning. The honeymoon phase, they call it. But for me, and maybe for many of us, that phase didn't last as long as I thought it would. My wife, Emma, and I had been together for over a decade, and in those early years, I thought we had everything figured out. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our little world. She was everything I had ever wanted in a partner. At least, that's what I told myself. The first crack in our marriage came on a Saturday morning, a time I usually looked forward to. I remember it so clearly. We had no plans, just the promise of a lazy weekend ahead. But when I came downstairs to make breakfast, Emma wasn't in the kitchen. I called her name, but the house was eerily quiet. Then I saw it. Her phone, lying face down on the kitchen counter. It wasn't anything suspicious at first glance. We'd both left our phones around before, sometimes even with texts or calls coming in. But this time, there was something about the way it was positioned that caught my attention. The screen was cracked slightly, but more unsettling was the way her phone buzzed with messages every few seconds, more than usual. I didn't pick it up. I should have just left it. But curiosity, like a tiny crack in a wall, started to grow. I checked her phone, but only for a second. Just long enough to see a name on the screen I didn't recognize, Daniel. It didn't seem like much, but the feeling that had been creeping up on me for months now, a kind of vague unease, suddenly sharpened into something much darker. I told myself I was overthinking it. Maybe it was a work friend, or someone she met through mutual acquaintances. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, not when everything had seemed so normal the night before. I left her phone where it was and went about my day, pretending I hadn't seen anything. But the seed had been planted. A few weeks later, I began to notice more. Emma would come home late from work with a vague excuse, something about long meetings or unexpected tasks. Then came the time she'd forgotten her phone at home. But when I went to pick it up, I would see notifications from that same name, Daniel. Sometimes just a "Hey, you okay?" or a "Miss you." And then one night, I saw something that made my stomach drop. It was a photo, a selfie, no less, of Emma smiling, holding a drink in one hand, and a man in the background. Daniel, I presumed. They were too close. It was a picture that felt off, but I couldn't confront her yet. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just being paranoid. I wasn't the type to accuse my wife without proof, not when I had no idea what was really going on. So I let it go. Then, it happened, something that pushed me past the point of denial. It was a Friday evening, and I had invited a few friends over for a casual get-together. We were just hanging out, playing cards, having a few beers. Emma was supposed to join us, but she had texted earlier saying she was feeling a bit under the weather. She asked if I minded if she stayed in for the night. At first, I thought nothing of it. She'd been working long hours lately, and I knew she needed rest. But around midnight, my friend Greg, who had been drinking a little too much, pulled me aside. He had a strange look on his face, almost guilty. "Hey man, I don't know if this is weird, but I think I just saw Emma, with someone else. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was her." My blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "I'm not sure, but I was heading out to get more beer, and I saw her standing by the cafe down the street, talking to some guy. They looked friendly. Too friendly. Sorry if that sounds messed up, but it didn't sit right with me." I felt my stomach drop. This wasn't just an odd coincidence anymore. Something was definitely going on. I didn't say anything to Greg. He probably didn't realize what he had just set in motion. I made an excuse to leave the party early, telling everyone I wasn't feeling great either. I didn't want to raise suspicion, not yet. I drove to the cafe Greg had mentioned, my heart hammering in my chest. And there she was, Emma, sitting at an outdoor table with none other than Daniel. They were laughing, too comfortably, too intimately. I watched for a while from a distance, the pit in my stomach growing deeper. They were clearly having a good time, sharing a joke, leaning in close. I shouldn't have been there. I should have walked away. But something inside me snapped. I couldn't just ignore what I had seen. I had to know what was really going on, no matter how painful it might be. I stayed hidden in my car, watching them for what felt like an eternity. Emma laughed, her head thrown back, her hand resting lightly on Daniel's. I couldn't make out their words from that distance, but their body language spoke volumes. There was no doubt in my mind. She was comfortable with him in a way she never was with me. I had always believed that our bond was something special, unbreakable. But seeing them together, I realized I was fooling myself. I tried to steady my breathing, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. What was I supposed to do now? Confront her right there? Call her and demand an explanation? I felt like I was drowning, and everything around me was spinning. The life I thought I had was collapsing into something I didn't even recognize. After what seemed like forever, they stood up to leave. I knew I had to make a decision, whether to confront her then and there or wait. But by the time I finally decided to get out of the car, they were already walking away. I didn't want to follow them, to make it worse than it already was. Instead, I drove home, feeling the weight of the situation settle on my chest like an anvil. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, every thought consumed by Emma and Daniel. My mind raced with questions I couldn't answer. Had this been going on for weeks? Months? Was I just too blind to see what was happening right in front of me? And the biggest question of all, why didn't she just tell me? What was I to her now, if not just some stranger she could deceive? At around 3 a.m., I heard the front door creak open. Emma had come home, but she didn't come straight to the bedroom. She stood in the hallway for a while, as if debating whether to come in. I pretended to be asleep, but every muscle in my body was tense, waiting for her to say something, anything. Finally, I heard her soft footsteps approaching the bed. She slid into her side, the bed shifting with her weight, but she didn't say a word. I could feel the silence between us, thick and suffocating. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but I stayed still. I stayed silent. It felt like the calm before a storm. I didn't sleep a wink. The next morning, I couldn't even look at her. I was so furious, so betrayed, that I felt like I might explode if I spoke. Emma, on the other hand, seemed completely unaware of what had happened the night before. She kissed me on the cheek as she got up to make breakfast. It was so normal, like nothing had changed. But I knew better. I couldn't just let this go. I had to know the truth. And more importantly, I had to make sure she knew I knew. I decided that the best way to handle this was to confront her directly, but not in some quiet, private way. No, I wanted her to understand the consequences of her actions. I needed to make sure she knew how deeply she had hurt me. And for that, I would need an audience. I waited until the weekend, when we had a group of friends over for dinner. They didn't know anything, of course. To them, Emma and I were still the happy couple. The perfect couple. But I knew it was time to stop pretending. I couldn't keep lying to myself. As everyone sat down at the table, laughing and chatting, I saw Emma glance over at me with a nervous smile. She was trying so hard to act normal, to pretend like everything was fine. But I could see through it. I could see the guilt in her eyes. I stood up, suddenly feeling the weight of all the words I had been holding back. Everyone, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. I think there's something Emma needs to explain to all of us. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me, then at Emma. Her face went pale. "What are you talking about, Jack?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but there was an edge to her voice. I didn't respond immediately. I wasn't going to make this easy for her. "I think you owe everyone here an explanation," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "About Daniel." Her eyes widened, and in that split second, I saw something in her shift: panic, fear, a desperate attempt to cover her tracks. "What are you talking about?" she repeated, but this time, her voice wavered. "I'm talking about the guy you've been seeing behind my back," I said, my words slicing through the tension. "The guy you've been meeting at that cafe. The one who's been texting you all hours of the night. I think it's time we all knew the truth." The room was completely still. My friends looked between Emma and me, unsure of what to say. Emma was frozen, her face a mixture of shock and disbelief. It was like she couldn't believe I had the nerve to say it out loud, in front of everyone. "Jack, this isn't..." she started, but I cut her off. "Don't try to lie to me, Emma. I've seen everything. The texts, the pictures, the way you look at him. And now, I think it's time you told everyone the truth. No more hiding behind your lies." For a long moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, Emma finally stood up, her face flushed with embarrassment. She looked at me, but her eyes were full of defiance. You don't understand, she said, her voice trembling. This isn't what you think. But I wasn't interested in her excuses. Not anymore. I don't care, I replied. You humiliated me, Emma. You destroyed everything we had. And now, you'll face the consequences. Emma stood there, her face flushed, her hands trembling. The silence in the room felt suffocating, and I could hear my heartbeat thundering in my ears. My friends exchanged nervous glances, unsure of what to do next. They had always known us as the couple that seemed to have it all together. They were witnessing something they didn't expect, something that was too personal, too raw. Jack, please, Emma finally whispered, her voice cracking. She looked at me with pleading eyes, like she was begging me to understand. This isn't the way to do this. I didn't care anymore. I had spent too long pretending everything was fine, hiding the truth behind closed doors. But now, it was out there for everyone to see. I wasn't going to let her twist her way out of it, not this time. No, Emma, I said, my voice low and firm. This is exactly how it has to be. You've lied to me for months, and I've had enough of it. My eyes scanned the room, meeting the eyes of my friends, who were still processing what was happening. You think I didn't notice? The late nights, the excuses, the secrecy? You thought you could fool me, didn't you? She tried to take a step toward me, but I held my ground. This stops now. Her eyes flickered with anger, but there was a hint of guilt there too, something she couldn't hide no matter how hard she tried. I never meant to hurt you, Jack, she said, but it sounded hollow. You just didn't get it. I felt trapped. You don't understand. Trapped? I echoed, my voice rising. You felt trapped? You didn't think about how I would feel when you chose him over me? Over us? You didn't think about the fact that you were betraying me with someone else? What about the vows we took? Did those mean nothing to you? The room was eerily quiet now. The tension was palpable. Emma's face was a mask of conflict, torn between guilt and defensiveness, but I wasn't done. I had to make her see the gravity of what she had done. I saw you, at that cafe. I continued, feeling the anger rise up in me. I wasn't going to confront you that night, but now I see what's really been happening. You and Daniel. How long were you going to keep this from me? Her lips trembled, and she looked away for a moment, like she couldn't meet my gaze anymore. The facade had crumbled, and the truth was undeniable. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered, but I could hear the cracks in her voice. I didn't know how to end it. I was confused. Daniel made me feel alive again, Jack. I thought we were drifting apart. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and unrecognizable. So you decided to have an affair? That's how you deal with it? You don't talk to me. You don't tell me how you feel. You go behind my back and sleep with someone else? She flinched at the word sleep, but I didn't care. She needed to hear this. She needed to understand what she had done to me, to us. I turned to my friends, who were still frozen in place, unsure of how to react. You all see it, don't you? I said, my voice shaking. This is what she's been doing behind my back. Pretending everything was fine, while I was the fool, believing her lies. All of you thought I was the lucky one. But look at me now. I could feel the heat of anger spreading through my chest, but there was something else, too. Something colder, something darker. A part of me wanted to see her squirm, wanted to make her feel the humiliation that I had felt for so long. But the more I spoke, the more I realized something. I wasn't just angry. I was devastated. Emma's eyes softened for a second, like she was seeing me for the first time. Jack, I never wanted to hurt you. Her voice faltered, and she trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. It was clear now. There was no excuse for what she had done, and she knew it. The silence that followed was suffocating. The air in the room felt thick with unspoken words, and I couldn't bring myself to say anything more. There was nothing left to say, at least not for now. Finally, I turned and walked toward the door, my feet dragging with the weight of everything that had just unfolded. I could hear Emma calling my name, but I didn't turn around. I needed space, time to process everything I had just learned. I had been betrayed by the one person I trusted most in this world, the woman I had built my life around, the person I thought would always have my back. As I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me like a slap to the face, and for the first time in years, I felt completely and utterly alone. I drove aimlessly that night, not knowing where I was going, just needing to get away from the house, away from the lies. Every street I passed felt like a reminder of everything I had built with Emma, our neighborhood, the places we used to visit together. All of it now felt like a cruel joke. I found myself parked outside a bar I used to go to with my old friends before Emma and I had become so consumed with each other. I never thought I'd end up here again, not like this. But something about the dim lights and the noise of people laughing and talking felt strangely comforting. At least here, no one knew me. No one knew what had just happened. I walked inside, trying to keep my head low, but the moment I stepped into the bar, everything about my life felt like it was out of my control. The bartender greeted me, a familiar face, but I could barely return his smile. Instead, I ordered a drink and sat at the far corner of the bar, away from the crowd. I wanted to drown the noise in my head, to numb myself for just a few hours. But as the night went on, the alcohol didn't help. The pain was still there, gnawing at me, the betrayal hanging over me like a storm cloud. The worst part wasn't even the affair. It was the realization that the woman I loved had been leading a double life for who knows how long, hiding things from me with such ease. My phone buzzed on the table. I didn't need to look at it to know who it was. Emma had sent me several texts, but I hadn't bothered to read any of them. I didn't want to hear her explanations or her excuses. I wasn't ready for that yet. But after a few more drinks, something shifted. I picked up the phone and unlocked it. The first message from Emma read, "Jack, please let's talk. I don't want to lose you. I'm so sorry. Please don't do this." Her words stung, and I felt a wave of anger wash over me. "Don't do this," she said. She was the one who had done it all. I deleted the message without replying. I wasn't ready to hear her apologies. I didn't know if I'd ever be ready. Hours passed, and I stayed at the bar, nursing my drink and trying to make sense of everything. Eventually, I paid my tab and left, heading back to the apartment. As I opened the door, I could hear Emma moving around inside, probably pacing. She saw me enter, her eyes wide with hope. "Jack, please, can we talk?" I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I set my keys down on the counter, trying to compose myself. The urge to scream at her was overwhelming, but I kept my voice steady. "What exactly is there left to say, Emma? You've already said everything you needed to say." She flinched at my words, and I could see the guilt written all over her face. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. You have to believe me. It just happened." I wanted to shout at her, to tell her that it wasn't just a mistake. It wasn't just something that happened. She had made a conscious decision to betray me. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I turned and walked toward the door again. This time, I wasn't leaving the apartment. But I needed to feel the space between us, just for a moment. "I think we both need some time apart," I said, my voice low but firm. "I don't know what happens next, Emma. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if I even want to try." Her eyes filled with tears, but I wasn't going to soften. "Not yet. Please, Jack," she whispered. "I love you." I didn't reply. I couldn't. The words felt meaningless now. She loved me? Then why had she done this to me? "I'm not sure I even know who you are anymore," I said, my voice breaking despite myself. And with that, I stepped out, closing the door behind me. The cool night air hit me once again as I stood outside the building. The weight of everything was unbearable, and I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, not knowing which path would lead to the future I wanted. Emma's betrayal had shattered me, and no matter how hard I tried to find answers or closure, I wasn't sure I would ever feel whole again. I woke up the next morning with a headache that felt like it was drilling through my skull. The alcohol hadn't done a thing to dull the pain of what had happened. If anything, it had made things worse. The silence in the apartment was suffocating, and I could feel the weight of Emma's absence like a heavy cloak around me. She had tried calling, texting, but I hadn't answered. I didn't want to hear what she had to say, not yet. It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't even the lies she had told or the fact that she had humiliated me in front of my friends. What hurt the most was how easily she had convinced herself that I wouldn't notice, that I wouldn't care, that I would just go along with it, as if nothing had changed. The hardest pill to swallow was realizing that the woman I had spent years with, the woman I had trusted with everything, had been capable of doing this without a second thought. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the phone in my hand, debating whether I should reach out to her. Should I listen to her plea for forgiveness? Or was it better to cut my losses and move on? I didn't know. I didn't know if I even could move on. I decided to go for a walk. Maybe the fresh air would clear my head, or at least give me a sense of clarity. The streets were still quiet, the world slowly waking up around me. As I walked through the park, I couldn't help but replay the events of the last few days in my mind. The betrayal, the confrontation with Emma, the broken trust. Each piece felt like a shard of glass cutting deeper into me. I made my way to a bench by the lake, the sound of the water lapping at the shore almost soothing in its simplicity. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to center myself. But then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed again. Emma. I didn't bother looking at it. I knew it would be another message pleading for forgiveness. I had seen enough of those last night. Jack, I'm so sorry. Please talk to me. Please, just give me a chance to explain. And then there was the message that cut through everything. I love you. I'm lost without you. Please don't leave me. The words hit me harder than I expected. I couldn't deny the pain in them, the desperation that seemed to pour out of her. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to scream, to tell her everything I felt. But something inside me just faltered. Was this the end of us? Could I really walk away from everything we had? I didn't know the answer, but I did know that I wasn't ready to let this go. Not yet. I had to know the truth, the full truth. I had to understand why she did this to me, why she threw away everything we had. I made the decision to go back home, but this time, it wasn't to reconcile. It was to get answers. And not just from Emma, from Daniel. I picked up the phone and dialed the number I had found on Emma's texts. It rang once, twice, before a deep voice answered. Hello. It was him. Daniel. I need to talk to you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It's about Emma. There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear him breathe, and I knew I had caught him off guard. I don't know what you want me to say, he replied, his voice almost apologetic. I never wanted to hurt you. I scoffed. You didn't want to hurt me? You're sleeping with my wife, and you didn't want to hurt me? You think that makes any sense? I didn't plan for this to happen, he said. But Emma and we've been talking for a while. She's been unhappy, Jack. I didn't know how to let it go. I was furious, but I forced myself to stay calm. So you thought it was okay to just come into my life and take what was mine? I never meant for it to go this far, Daniel said, his voice low. I'm sorry. I truly am. It took everything in me not to hang up. I could feel the rage rising, but I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of hearing me lose control. Tell Emma I'll be home later. I want to have a real conversation with both of you, face to face. I hung up before he could say anything else. As I stood there in the park, a part of me wondered what this conversation would bring. Would they try to apologize again? Would Emma cry and beg for my forgiveness? Could I even forgive her? I had no answers, but I knew this confrontation would be the turning point. One way or another, everything between us would change today. I walked back home, each step feeling heavier than the last. My mind was racing with questions, all unanswered. What would I say to Emma when I got back? Would she still try to deny everything? Would she play the victim? I wasn't sure, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let her twist the narrative. When I entered the apartment, the silence was deafening. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves, but my hands were shaking. I had never felt so conflicted in my life. On one hand, I loved Emma. I wanted to believe her when she said she was sorry. But on the other hand, the betrayal cut so deep that it felt like it would never heal. I found her sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. The moment she saw me, she stood up, her voice trembling. Jack, please. I know you're angry, and I know I've messed up, but I need you to understand. I didn't let her finish. Understand what, Emma? That you lied to me for months? That you were seeing someone behind my back? That you humiliated me in front of my friends? My voice was sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. She winced, as if my words physically hurt her. I wasn't sure if I was more angry at her or at myself for letting it go on this long. Jack, she started again, but this time I interrupted. I'm done with the excuses, Emma, I said, my voice low. I want the truth. All of it. She swallowed hard, her face pale. For a second, she looked like she might break down completely, but she managed to compose herself. Okay, she whispered. I'll tell you everything. I crossed my arms, not sure whether I was ready to hear what was coming next. I met Daniel about 6 months ago, she started, her voice barely above a whisper. We met through a friend of a friend. At first, it was just casual. We would talk, and it felt easy. He made me feel seen in ways I hadn't felt in a long time. You weren't the problem, Jack. You were always there for me, but I felt distant from you. I didn't know how to fix it, and I didn't want to admit it to myself. I was silent, letting her words sink in. Her explanation made sense, but it didn't excuse what she had done. She wasn't just emotionally distant. She had gone behind my back and started an affair. Did you ever think about how this would affect me? I asked, my voice colder than I intended. How I would feel knowing that the woman I trusted was doing this. Did you ever stop to think about us, Emma? Or was it just about what you needed? Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't try to wipe them away this time. She just let them fall. I didn't think, she said quietly. I was selfish. I thought I was just doing what made me happy. But I wasn't thinking about you. I was just so lost, Jack. And when I realized what I had done, I didn't know how to come back. I didn't know how to fix it. I shook my head, the weight of her words heavy on my chest. You don't get it, do you? You didn't just hurt me. You destroyed everything. The trust we built, the life we had. You shattered it. And now, you want me to just forget it and move on because you're sorry? She nodded, her face crumpling as she stepped closer to me. I would do anything to take it back. I swear, Jack. I never meant to hurt you. Please, please don't leave me. I love you. I need you. I stared at her for a long moment, feeling the tug of my own heart breaking. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to hold her and tell her everything would be okay. But I couldn't ignore the betrayal. It was there, lingering between us, thick and suffocating. Just then, the doorbell rang, interrupting the moment. Emma flinched, and I could tell she wasn't expecting anyone. I went to answer it. When I opened the door, Daniel was standing there, looking uncomfortable but determined. He wasn't the man I expected, the confident, suave character I'd imagined from Emma's texts. Instead, he looked nervous, as if he didn't belong here. Jack, he said, his voice hesitant. I know you probably hate me right now, but I wanted to come here, to apologize. I never wanted to hurt you. This wasn't supposed to happen. I could barely look at him. He wasn't the one I was angry at. No, my anger was directed at Emma, the one who had chosen him over me. But at that moment, I realized something. This wasn't just about Emma or Daniel. It was about me, too. I had allowed myself to stay in a relationship where I wasn't being seen, where my needs weren't being met. I had allowed myself to become a silent bystander in my own life. Apology accepted, I said, my voice tight. Now get out. Daniel nodded, not saying another word, and turned to leave. As he walked away, I felt something shift inside me. The anger was still there, but there was also a sense of closure. I had confronted him, and now he was gone. But what about Emma? What about our future? I turned back to face her, and for the first time since everything had started, I saw her for what she was, someone who had made a choice I could never undo. I can't do this anymore, I said, the words coming out more easily than I thought they would. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. I need time. I need to figure out who I am without you. Without this, whatever this is. Emma's face fell, and I saw the devastation in her eyes. But I had no choice. I had to take control of my own life again. The air felt thick between us as I stood there, watching Emma process what I had just said. The words had left my mouth, but the weight of them seemed to settle heavily in the room. She didn't speak immediately. Instead, she just stood there, her eyes glossy, staring at me as if trying to will me to change my mind. I can't just erase what I've done, Jack, she finally said, her voice small. I love you, and I know I messed up. I can't fix it, but please don't give up on me. I felt the surge of frustration again, the kind that had been building for weeks. I wanted to shout at her, to demand more. But then I realized something. I had been giving her every ounce of patience, every chance to make it right, and she had failed me time and time again. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. You can't just say you're sorry and expect me to forget everything, I said, my voice tight. You can't undo what you've done. I don't even know who you are anymore. How am I supposed to move forward after this? Her face twisted in anguish. She stepped toward me, her hands trembling, but I took a step back, putting some distance between us. I couldn't let her get too close again, not after everything. I know, she whispered. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I can't lose you. I can't lose everything. I stared at her, unsure if the words she was saying were even real anymore. I was exhausted, physically, mentally, emotionally. The anger I had felt earlier had faded into something hollow, something cold. You've already lost me, Emma, I said, the truth feeling like it was tearing me apart as I spoke. Maybe not completely, but enough for me to walk away. I need to find who I am again. Without you. without this mess you've created. I turned toward the door, and she immediately moved to block my path. She grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong for someone who had been breaking down just moments before. Jack, please, she begged. Don't leave me. Please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling, or... Stop. I cut her off, my patience wearing thin. I don't know if I want to fix this. I don't know if you want to fix this. If I leave, it's because I need to, because I don't want to keep living in this twisted version of what we once had. I gently pulled her hand from my arm, her fingers slipping through mine like sand. I felt the gravity of the moment, like everything was shifting beneath my feet. As I stepped outside into the cool evening, I heard her call my name once more, but I didn't turn around. I couldn't. I didn't have anything left to give her, and in that moment, I knew the hardest part wasn't leaving her. It was learning to live without her. I walked down the hallway of our apartment building, the weight of everything still heavy on my shoulders. What now? I had no idea. I couldn't see a clear path ahead. But what I did know was that staying in that relationship, staying in that apartment, meant staying in a lie. And I wasn't willing to live that way anymore. The days after I walked away from Emma felt like I was waking up from a long, painful dream. The apartment felt empty, not just physically, but emotionally. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was constantly walking on eggshells, pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. It was liberating, in a way, but it was also terrifying. I focused on rebuilding myself. I reconnected with old friends, the ones who had always been there, but I had neglected in favor of my relationship. I started taking long walks in the mornings, went back to the gym, and found small moments of joy that I had forgotten existed. I started remembering who I was before Emma, before I lost myself in her. A few weeks later, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, Lily, an old college friend. We had lost touch after graduation, but we instantly fell back into easy conversation like no time had passed. She was kind, funny, and sharp, and for the first time in a long time, I found myself smiling without forcing it. We started spending more time together, going out for coffee, catching up on life. It wasn't romantic at first, but there was something comforting about her presence. She reminded me of a life I had forgotten, the life I had pushed aside in favor of a relationship that had drained me. One night, after a particularly long conversation about everything I had gone through, Lily said something that stuck with me. Jack, you've been through hell. But you know what? You're still standing. And that's powerful. It was a simple statement, but it sparked something in me. I had been so consumed with the hurt and betrayal that I hadn't even realized how far I had come since leaving Emma. I had strength I didn't know I had. I was beginning to heal. But then came the unexpected. One afternoon, as I was sitting in a coffee shop with Lily, I saw a familiar face, Emma. She walked in, her eyes scanning the room, and when she saw me, she froze. Her expression went from shock to something darker. She quickly turned away, as if trying to pretend she hadn't seen me, but I wasn't going to let her hide anymore. I stood up, my heart pounding, and walked toward her. Emma, I said, my voice steady. She slowly turned around, and when she saw me, there was an immediate flicker of guilt in her eyes. She opened her mouth to say something, but I cut her off. I think you've had enough chances to explain yourself, I said. I've given you more than you deserved, and I'm done with the games. You don't get to just waltz back into my life like nothing happened. I've moved on, and it's time for you to realize that. Her face flushed with embarrassment, but instead of the pleading I had expected, she just stood there, silent. I could see the regret in her eyes, but I wasn't looking for her apologies anymore. They meant nothing to me. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said, my tone cold. But don't ever think you can pull me back into your mess. She nodded, her lips tight, and without another word, she walked out of the cafe. I watched her leave, and for the first time, I didn't feel a thing. No anger, no sadness, just relief. When I returned to the table, Lily was watching me, a quiet understanding in her eyes. You're free, Jack, she said softly. Really free. And in that moment, I realized she was right. I was free. I had taken control of my life again. I was no longer the man who had been blindly loyal to someone who didn't deserve it. I wasn't the one waiting for scraps of affection. I was the one who had moved forward. Emma had thought she could take everything from me, but in the end, it was her who had lost. And I was better for it. I left the cafe that day feeling lighter, more certain of the future than I had in a long time. I didn't need revenge. Life had already given her the consequences she deserved. All I needed to do now was keep moving forward, focusing on the life I was rebuilding. One I knew would be filled with new opportunities, new love, and above all, respect for myself. The past was over, and for the first time, I was looking ahead with nothing but hope.